Genesis 1:26-28. God spoke, "Let us make human beings in our image, make them reflecting our nature, so they can be responsible for the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the cattle, and yes, earth itself, and every animal that moves on the face of earth. God created human beings. He created them godlike, reflecting God's nature. He created them male and female. God blessed them, prosper, reproduce, fill earth, take charge, be responsible for fish in the sea and birds in the air, for every living thing that moves on the face of earth." Genesis 4:6-7. God spoke to Cain, "Why this tantrum? Why the sulking? If you do well, won't you be accepted? And if you don't do well, sin is lying in wait for you, ready to pounce. It's out to get you. You've got to master it." Genesis 13:8-11. Abram said to Lot, "Let's not have fighting between us, between your shepherds and my shepherds. After all, we're family. Look around. Isn't there plenty of land out there? Let's separate. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left." Lot looked. He saw the whole plain of the Jordan spread out. Well watered. This was before God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like God's garden, like Egypt, and stretching all the way to Zoar. Lot took the whole plain of the Jordan. Lot set out to the east. That's how they came to part company, uncle and nephew. Abram settled in Canaan. Lot settled in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent near Sodom. Genesis 13:14-17. After Lot separated from him, God said to Abram, "Open your eyes, look around. Look north, south, east, and west. Everything you see, the whole land spread out before you, I will give to you and your children forever. I'll make your descendants like dust. Counting your descendants will be as impossible as counting the dust of the earth. So, on your feet, get moving. Walk through the country, its length and breadth. I'm giving it all to you." Genesis 14:22-24. But Abram told the king of Sodom, "I swear to God, the high God, creator of heaven and earth, this solemn oath, that I'll take nothing from you, not so much as a thread or a shoestring. I'm not going to have you go around saying, 'El made Abram rich,' nothing for me other than what the young men ate and the share of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. They're to get their share of the plunder." Genesis 15:6. And he believed God. God declared him set right with God. Genesis 19:16-17. Lot was dragging his feet. The men grabbed Lot's arm and the arms of his wife and daughters. God was so merciful to them, and dragged them to safety outside the city. When they had them outside, Lot was told, "Now run for your life. Don't look back. Don't stop anywhere on the plain. Run for the hills or you'll be swept away." Genesis 19:26. But Lot's wife looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. Genesis 21:1-4. God visited Sarah exactly as he said he would. God did to Sarah what he promised. Sarah became pregnant and gave Abraham a son in his old age, and at the very time God had set. Abraham named him Isaac. When his son was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him, just as God had commanded. Genesis 21:19. Just then God opened her eyes. She looked. She saw a well of water. She went to it and filled her canteen and gave the boy a long, cool drink. Genesis 24:42-44. Well, when I came this very day to the spring, I prayed, God, God of my master Abraham, make things turn out well in this task I've been given. I'm standing at this well. When a young woman comes here to draw water, and I say to her, please, give me a sip of water from your jug, and she says, not only will I give you a drink, I'll also water your camels. Let that woman be the wife God has picked out for my master's son. Genesis 24:50-51. Laban and Bethuel answered, this is undeniably from God. We have no say in the matter, either yes or no. Rebekah is yours. Take her and go. Let her be the wife of your master's son, as God has made plain. Genesis 24:56. He said, oh, don't make me wait. God has worked everything out so well. Send me off to my master. Genesis 25:21-23. Isaac prayed hard to God for his wife, because she was barren. God answered his prayer, and Rebekah became pregnant. But the children tumbled and kicked inside her, so much that she said, if this is the way it's going to be, why go on living? She went to God to find out what was going on. God told her, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 peoples butting heads while still in your body. 1 people will overpower the other, and the older will serve the younger. Genesis 26:12-15. Isaac planted crops in that land and took in a huge harvest. God blessed him. The man got richer and richer by the day until he was very wealthy. He accumulated flocks and herds and many, many servants, so much so that the Philistines began to envy him. They got back at him by throwing dirt and debris into all the wells that his father's servants had dug back in the days of his father Abraham, clogging up all the wells. Genesis 26:16. Finally, Abimelech told Isaac, leave. You've become far too big for us. Genesis 26:19-24. One day, as Isaac's servants were digging in the valley, they came on a well of spring water. The shepherds of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's shepherds, claiming, this water is ours. So Isaac named the well Esek Quarrel, because they quarreled over it. They dug another well, and there was a difference over that one also, so he named it Sitnah Accusation. He went on from there and dug yet another well. But there was no fighting over this one, so he named it Rehoboth Wide Open Spaces, saying, now God has given us plenty of space to spread out in the land. From there he went up to Beersheba. That very night God appeared to him and said, I am the God of Abraham your father. Don't fear a thing, because I'm with you. I'll bless you and make your children flourish because of Abraham my servant. Genesis 29:31 to 32. When God realized that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb. But Rachel was barren. Leah became pregnant and had a son. She named him Reuben. Look, it's a boy. This is a sign, she said, that God has seen my misery, and a sign that now my husband will love me. Genesis 29:33 to 35. She became pregnant again and had another son. God heard, she said, that I was unloved, and so he gave me this son also. She named this one Simeon. God heard. She became pregnant yet again, another son. She said, now maybe my husband will connect with me. I've given him 3 sons. That's why she named him Levi Connect. She became pregnant a final time and had a 4th son. She said, this time I'll praise God. So she named him Judah. Praise God. Then she stopped having children. Genesis 30:1. When Rachel realized that she wasn't having any children for Jacob, she became jealous of her sister. She told Jacob, give me sons or I'll die. Genesis 33:9. Esau said, O brother, I have plenty of everything. Keep what is yours for yourself. Exodus 2:25. God saw what was going on with Israel. God understood. Exodus 3:7 to 8. God said, I've taken a good, long look at the affliction of my people in Egypt. I've heard their cries for deliverance from their slave masters. I know all about their pain. And now I have come down to help them, pry them loose from the grip of Egypt, get them out of that country, and bring them to a good land with wide open spaces. A land lush with milk and honey, the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Exodus 3:9 to 10. The Israelite cry for help has come to me, and I've seen for myself how cruelly they're being treated by the Egyptians. It's time for you to go back. I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the people of Israel, out of Egypt. Exodus 20:3 to 15. No other gods, only me. No carved gods of any size, shape, or form of anything whatever, whether of things that fly, or walk, or swim. Don't bow down to them, and don't serve them, because I am God, your God, and I'm a most jealous God, punishing the children for any sins their parents pass on to them to the 3rd, and yes, even to the 4th generation of those who hate me. But I'm unswervingly loyal to the thousands who love me and keep my commandments. No using the name of God, your God, in curses or silly banter. God won't put up with the irreverent use of his name. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Work 6 days and do everything you need to do. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to God, your God. Don't do any work, not you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your servant, nor your maid, nor your animals, not even the foreign guest visiting in your town. For in 6 days God made heaven, earth, and sea, and everything in them. He rested on the 7th day. Therefore God blessed the Sabbath day. He set it apart as a holy day. Honor your father and mother, so that you'll live a long time in the land that God, your God, is giving you. No murder, no adultery, no stealing. Exodus 20:20. Moses spoke to the people, "Don't be afraid. God has come to test you and instill a deep and reverent awe within you so that you won't sin." Numbers 11:4-6. The misfits among the people had a craving, and soon they had the people of Israel whining, "Why can't we have meat? We ate fish in Egypt and got it free, to say nothing of the cucumbers and melons, the leeks and onions and garlic. But nothing tastes good out here. All we get is manna, manna, manna." Numbers 11:23. God answered Moses, "So, do you think I can't take care of you? You'll see soon enough whether what I say happens for you or not." Deuteronomy 1:29-36. I tried to relieve your fears. Don't be terrified of them. God, your God, is leading the way. He's fighting for you. You saw with your own eyes what he did for you in Egypt. You saw what he did in the wilderness, how God, your God, carried you as a father carries his child, carried you the whole way until you arrived here. When God heard what you said, he exploded in anger. But now that you're here, you won't trust God, your God, this same God who goes ahead of you in your travels to scout out a place to pitch camp, a fire by night and a cloud by day to show you the way to go. He swore not a single person of this evil generation is going to get so much as a look at the good land that I promised to give to your parents. Not one, except for Caleb son of Jephunneh. He'll see it. I'll give him and his descendants the land he walked on because he was all for following God, heart and soul. Deuteronomy 4:5-10. Pay attention. I'm teaching you the rules and regulations that God commanded me, so that you may live by them in the land you are entering to take up ownership. Keep them. Practice them. You'll become wise and understanding. When people hear and see what's going on, they'll say, "What a great nation. So wise, so understanding. We've never seen anything like it." Yes. What other great nation has gods that are intimate with them, the way God, our God, is with us, always ready to listen to us? And what other great nation has rules and regulations as good and fair as this revelation that I'm setting before you today? Just make sure you stay alert. Keep close watch over yourselves. Don't forget anything of what you've seen. Don't let your heart wander off. Stay vigilant as long as you live. Teach what you've seen and heard to your children and grandchildren. That day when you stood before God, your God, at Horeb, God said to me, "Assemble the people in my presence to listen to my words, so that they will learn to fear me in holy fear for as long as they live on the land. And then they will teach these same words to their children." Deuteronomy 4:23-24. So stay alert. Don't for a minute forget the covenant which God, your God, made with you. And don't take up with any carved images. No forms of any kind. God, your God, issued clear commands on that. God, your God, is not to be trifled with. He's a consuming fire, a jealous God. Deuteronomy 4:25-28. When the time comes that you have children and grandchildren, put on years and start taking things for granted. If you then become corrupt and make any carved images, no matter what their form, by doing what is sheer evil in God's eyes and provoking his anger. I can tell you right now, with heaven and earth as witnesses, that it will be all over for you. You'll be kicked off the land that you're about to cross over the Jordan to possess. Believe me, you'll have a very short stay there. You'll be ruined, completely ruined. God will scatter you far and wide. A few of you will survive here, and there in the nations where God will drive you. There you can worship your homemade gods to your heart's content, your wonderful gods of wood and stone that can't see or hear or eat or smell. Deuteronomy 4:29-31. But even there, if you seek God, your God, you'll be able to find him if you're serious, looking for him with your whole heart and soul. When troubles come and all these awful things happen to you, in future days you will come back to God, your God, and listen obediently to what he says. God, your God, is above all a compassionate God. In the end, he will not abandon you. He won't bring you to ruin. He won't forget the covenant with your ancestors, which he swore to them. Deuteronomy 4:32-40. Ask questions. Find out what has been going on all these years before you were born. From the day God created man and woman on this earth, and from the horizon in the east to the horizon in the west, as far back as you can imagine and as far away as you can imagine. Has as great a thing as this ever happened? Has anyone ever heard of such a thing? Has a people ever heard, as you did, a God speaking out of the middle of the fire and lived to tell the story? Or has a God ever tried to select for himself a nation from within a nation using trials, miracles, and war, putting his strong hand in, reaching his long arm out? A spectacle awesome and staggering, the way God, your God, did it for you in Egypt while you stood right there and watched. You were shown all this so that you would know that God is, well, God. He's the only God there is. He's it. He made it possible for you to hear his voice out of heaven to discipline you. Down on earth, he showed you the big fire, and again you heard his words, this time out of the fire. He loved your ancestors and chose to work with their children. He personally and powerfully brought you out of Egypt in order to displace bigger and stronger and older nations with you, bringing you out and turning their land over to you as an inheritance. And now it's happening. This very day. Know this well then. Take it to heart right now. God is in heaven above. God is on earth below. He's the only God there is. Obediently live by his rules and commands which I'm giving you today, so that you'll live well and your children after you. Oh, you'll live a long time in the land that God, your God, is giving you. Deuteronomy 5:32-33. So be very careful to act exactly as God commands you. Don't veer off to the right or the left. Walk straight down the road God commands so that you'll have a good life and live a long time in the land that you're about to possess. Deuteronomy 6:5-9. Love God, your God, with your whole heart. Love him with all that's in you. Love him with all you've got. Write these commandments that I've given you today on your hearts. Get them inside of you, and then get them inside your children. Talk about them wherever you are, sitting at home or walking in the street. Talk about them from the time you get up in the morning to when you fall into bed at night. Tie them on your hands and foreheads as a reminder. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your homes and on your city gates. Deuteronomy 6:10-12. When God, your God, ushers you into the land He promised through your ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to give you, you're going to walk into large, bustling cities you didn't build, well-furnished houses you didn't buy, come upon wells you didn't dig, vineyards and olive orchards you didn't plant. When you take it all in and settle down, pleased and content, make sure you don't forget how you got there. God brought you out of slavery in Egypt. Deuteronomy 6:13-19. Deeply respect God, your God. Serve and worship Him exclusively. Back up your promises with His name only. Don't fool around with other gods, the gods of your neighbors, because God, your God, who is alive among you, is a jealous God. Don't provoke Him, igniting His hot anger that would burn you right off the face of the earth. Don't push God, your God, to the wall as you did that day at Massa, the testing place. Carefully keep the commands of God, your God, all the requirements and regulations He gave you. Do what is right. Do what is good in God's sight, so you'll live a good life and be able to march in and take this pleasant land that God so solemnly promised through your ancestors, throwing out your enemies left and right, exactly as God said. Deuteronomy 6:25. It will be a set right and put together life for us if we make sure that we do this entire commandment in the presence of God, our God, just as He commanded us to do. Deuteronomy 6:20-24. The next time your child asks you, what do these requirements and regulations and rules that God, our God, has commanded mean? Tell your child, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and God powerfully intervened and got us out of that country. We stood there and watched as God delivered miracle signs, great wonders, and evil visitations on Egypt, on Pharaoh and his household. He pulled us out of there so He could bring us here and give us the land He so solemnly promised to our ancestors. That's why God commanded us to follow all these rules, so that we would live reverently before God, our God, as He gives us this good life, keeping us alive for a long time to come. Deuteronomy 7:7-10. God wasn't attracted to you and didn't choose you because you were big and important. The fact is, there was almost nothing to you. He did it out of sheer love, keeping the promise He made to your ancestors. God stepped in and mightily bought you back out of that world of slavery, freed you from the iron grip of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know this: God, your God, is God indeed, a God you can depend upon. He keeps His covenant of loyal love with those who love Him and observe His commandments for 1,000 generations. But He also pays back those who hate Him, pays them the wages of death. He isn't slow to pay them off. Those who hate Him, He pays right on time. Deuteronomy 7:6. Do this because you are a people set apart as holy to God, your God. God, your God, chose you out of all the people on earth for Himself as a cherished, personal treasure. Deuteronomy 7:3-4. Don't marry them. Don't give your daughters to their sons, and don't take their daughters for your sons. Before you know it, They'd involve you in worshiping their gods, and God would explode in anger, putting a quick end to you. Deuteronomy 7:12 to 135. And this is what will happen when you, on your part, will obey these directives, keeping and following them. God, on his part, will keep the covenant of loyal love that he made with your ancestors. He will love you. He will bless you. He will increase you. He will bless the babies from your womb and the harvest of grain, new wine, and oil from your fields. He'll bless the calves from your herds and lambs from your flocks in the country he promised your ancestors that he'd give you. You'll be blessed beyond all other peoples. No sterility or barrenness in you or your animals. God will get rid of all sickness. And all the evil afflictions you experienced in Egypt, he'll put not on you, but on those who hate you. Deuteronomy 7:25 to 26. Make sure you set fire to their carved gods. Don't get greedy for the veneer of silver and gold on them and take it for yourselves. You'll get trapped by it for sure. God hates it. It's an abomination to God, your God. And don't dare bring one of these abominations home, or you'll end up just like it, burned up as a holy destruction. No, it is forbidden. Hate it. Abominate it. Destroy it and preserve God's holiness. Deuteronomy 3:18 to 28. I commanded you at that time, God, your God, has given you this land to possess. Your men, fit and armed for the fight, are to cross the river in advance of their brothers, the people of Israel. Only your wives, children, and livestock, I know you have much livestock, may go ahead and settle down in the towns I have already given you, until God secures living space for your brothers as he has for you, and they have taken possession of the country west of the Jordan that God, your God, is giving them. After that, each man may return to the land I've given you here. I commanded Joshua at that time. You've seen with your own two eyes everything God, your God, has done to these two kings. God is going to do the same thing to all the kingdoms over there across the river where you're headed. Don't be afraid of them. God, your God, he's fighting for you. At that same time, I begged God, God, my master, you let me in on the beginnings. You let me see your greatness. You let me see your might. What God in heaven or earth can do anything like what you've done? Please, let me in also on the endings. Let me cross the river and see the good land over the Jordan, the lush hills, the Lebanon Mu. But God was still angry with me because of you. He wouldn't listen. He said, enough of that. Not another word from you on this. Climb to the top of Mount Pisgah and look around. Look west, north, south, east. Take in the land with your own eyes. Take a good look, because you're not going to cross this Jordan. Then command Joshua, give him courage. Give him strength. Single-handed, he will lead this people across the river. Single-handed, he'll cause them to inherit the land at which you can only look. Deuteronomy 4:1-2. Now listen, Israel. Listen carefully to the rules and regulations that I am teaching you to follow, so that you may live and enter and take possession of the land that God, the God of your fathers, is giving to you. Don't add a word to what I command you, and don't remove a word from it. Keep the commands of God, your God, that I am commanding you. Deuteronomy 4:15-20. You saw no form on the day God spoke to you at Horeb from out of the fire. Remember that. Carefully guard yourselves so that you don't turn corrupt and make a form, carving a figure that looks male or female, or looks like a prowling animal, or a flying bird, or a slithering snake, or a fish in a stream. And also carefully guard yourselves so that you don't look up into the skies and see the sun and moon and stars, all the constellations of the skies, and be seduced into worshiping and serving them. God set them out for everybody's benefit everywhere. But you, God took you right out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to become the people of his inheritance, and that's what you are this very day. Deuteronomy 5, 8-10. No carved gods of any size, shape, or form of anything whatever, whether of things that fly, or walk, or swim. Don't bow down to them, and don't serve them, because I am God, your God, and I'm a most jealous God. I hold parents responsible for any sins they pass on to their children to the third, and yes, even to the fourth generation. But I'm lovingly loyal to the thousands who love me and keep my commandments. Deuteronomy 5, 11-21. No using the name of God, your God, in curses or silly banter. God won't put up with the irreverent use of his name. No working on the Sabbath. Keep it holy just as God, your God, commanded you. Work 6 days, doing everything you have to do, but the seventh day is a Sabbath, a rest day. No work, not you, your son, your daughter, your servant, your maid, your ox, your donkey, or any of your animals, and not even the foreigner visiting your town. That way your servants and maids will get the same rest as you. Don't ever forget that you were slaves in Egypt, and God, your God, got you out of there in a powerful show of strength. That's why God, your God, commands you to observe the day of Sabbath rest. Respect your father and mother. God, your God, commands it. You'll have a long life. The land that God is giving you will treat you well. No murder. No adultery. No stealing. No lies about your neighbor. No coveting your neighbor's wife. And no lusting for his house, field, servant, maid, ox, or donkey either, nothing that belongs to your neighbor. Deuteronomy 5, 28-29. God heard what you said to me and told me. I've heard what the people said to you. They're right, good and true words. What I wouldn't give if they'd always feel this way, continuing to revere me and always keep all my commands. They'd have a good life forever, they and their children. Deuteronomy 7, 17-19. You're going to think to yourselves, oh, we're outnumbered 10-1 by these nations. We'll never even make a dent in them. But I'm telling you, don't be afraid. Remember, yes, remember in detail what God, your God, did to Pharaoh and all Egypt. Remember the great contests to which you were eyewitnesses, the miracle signs, the wonders, God's mighty hand as he stretched out his arm and took you out of there. God, your God, is going to do the same thing to these people you're now so afraid of. Deuteronomy 8, 1-5. Keep and live out the entire commandment that I'm commanding you today, so that you'll live and prosper, and enter and own the land that God promised to your ancestors. Remember every road that God led you on for those 40 years in the wilderness, pushing you to your limits, testing you so that he would know what you were made of, whether you would keep his commandments or not. He put you through hard times. He made you go hungry. Then he fed you with manna, something neither you nor your parents knew anything about, so you would learn that men and women don't live by bread only. We live by every word that comes from God's mouth. Your clothes didn't wear out, and your feet didn't blister those 40 years. You learn deep in your heart that God disciplines you in the same ways a father disciplines his child. Deuteronomy 8:10-16. After a meal, satisfied, bless God, your God, for the good land he has given you. Make sure you don't forget God, your God, by not keeping his commandments, his rules and regulations that I command you today. Make sure that when you eat and are satisfied, build pleasant houses and settle in, see your herds and flocks flourish and more money come in. Watch your standard of living going up and up. Make sure you don't become so full of yourself and your things that you forget God, your God, the God who delivered you from Egyptian slavery, the God who led you through that huge and fearsome wilderness, those desolate, arid badlands crawling with fiery snakes and scorpions, the God who gave you water gushing from hard rock, the God who gave you manna to eat in the wilderness, something your ancestors had never heard of, in order to give you a taste of the hard life, too. Deuteronomy 8:17-20. If you start thinking to yourselves, I did all this, and all by myself. I'm rich. It's all mine. Well, think again. Remember that God, your God, gave you the strength to produce all this wealth, so as to confirm the covenant that he promised to your ancestors, as it is today. If you forget God, your God, and start taking up with other gods, serving and worshiping them, I'm on record right now as giving you firm warning. That will be the end of you. I mean it, destruction. You'll go to your doom, the same as the nations God is destroying before you. Doom because you wouldn't obey the voice of God, your God. Deuteronomy 8:6-9. So it's paramount that you keep the commandments of God, your God, walk down the roads he shows you, and reverently respect him. God is about to bring you into a good land, a land with brooks and rivers, springs and lakes, streams out of the hills and through the valleys. It's a land of wheat and barley, of vines and figs and pomegranates, of olives, oil and honey. It's land where you'll never go hungry, always food on the table and a roof over your head. It's a land where you'll get iron out of rocks and mine copper from the hills. Deuteronomy 9:4-5. But when God pushes them out ahead of you, don't start thinking to yourselves, it's because of all the good I've done that God has brought me in here to dispossess these nations. Actually, it's because of all the evil these nations have done. No, it's nothing good that you've done, no record for decency that you've built up, that got you here. It's because of the vile wickedness of these nations that God, your God, is dispossessing them before you, so that he can keep his promised word to your ancestors, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Deuteronomy 9:6-10. Know this, and don't ever forget it. It's not because of any good that you've done that God is giving you this good land to own. Anything but. You're stubborn as mules. Keep in mind and don't ever forget how angry you made God, your God, in the wilderness. You've kicked and screamed against God from the day you left Egypt until you got to this place, rebels all the way. You made God angry at Horeb, made him so angry that he wanted to destroy you. When I climbed the mountain to receive the slabs of stone, the tablets of the covenant that God made with you. I stayed there on the mountain 40 days and nights. I ate no food. I drank no water. Then God gave me the 2 slabs of stone, engraved with the finger of God. They contained word for word everything that God spoke to you on the mountain out of the fire on the day of the assembly. Deuteronomy 9:21. But that sin thing that you made, that calf god, I took and burned in the fire, pounded and ground it until it was crushed into a fine powder, then threw it into the stream that comes down the mountain. Deuteronomy 10:12-18. So now, Israel, what do you think God expects from you? Just this: live in his presence in holy reverence. Follow the road he sets out for you. Love him. Serve God, your God, with everything you have in you. Obey the commandments and regulations of God that I'm commanding you today. Live a good life. Look around you. Everything you see is God's, the heavens above and beyond, the earth, and everything on it. But it was your ancestors who God fell in love with. He picked their children, that's you, out of all the other peoples. That's where we are right now. So cut away the thick calluses from your heart and stop being so willfully hard-headed. God, your God, is the God of all gods. He's the master of all masters, a God immense and powerful and awesome. He doesn't play favorites, takes no bribes, makes sure orphans and widows are treated fairly, takes loving care of foreigners by seeing that they get food and clothing. Deuteronomy 11:1. So love God, your God. Guard well his rules and regulations. Obey his commandments for the rest of time. Deuteronomy 11:8-12. So it's you who are in charge of keeping the entire commandment that I command you today, so that you'll have the strength to invade and possess the land that you are crossing the river to make your own. Your obedience will give you a long life on the soil that God promised to give your ancestors and their children, a land flowing with milk and honey. The land you are entering to take up ownership isn't like Egypt, the land you left, where you had to plant your own seed and water it yourselves as in a vegetable garden. But the land you are about to cross the river and take for your own is a land of mountains and valleys. It drinks water that rains from the sky. It's a land that God, your God, personally tends. He's the gardener. He alone keeps his eye on it all year long. Deuteronomy 11:13-32. From now on, if you listen obediently to the commandments that I am commanding you today, love God, your God, and serve him with everything you have within you. He'll take charge of sending the rain at the right time, both autumn and spring rains, so that you'll be able to harvest your grain, your grapes, you. He'll make sure there's plenty of grass for your animals. You'll have plenty to eat. But be vigilant, lest you be seduced away and end up serving and worshiping other gods, and God erupts in anger and shuts down heaven, so there's no rain and nothing grows in the fields. And in no time at all you're starved out, not a trace of you left on the good land that God is giving you. Place these words on your hearts. Get them deep inside you. Tie them on your hands and foreheads as a reminder. Teach them to your children. Talk about them wherever you are, sitting at home or walking in the street. Talk about them from the time you get up in the morning until you fall into bed at night. Inscribe them on the doorposts and gates of your cities, so that you'll live a long time, and your children with you, on the soil that God promised to give your ancestors for as long as there is a sky over the earth. That's right. If you diligently keep all this commandment that I command you to obey, love God, your God, do what he tells you, stick close to him, God on his part will drive out all these nations that stand in your way. Yes, he'll drive out nations much bigger and stronger than you. Every square inch on which you place your foot will be yours. Your borders will stretch from the wilderness to the mountains of Lebanon, from the Euphrates River to the Mediterranean Sea. No one will be able to stand in your way. Everywhere you go, God sent fear and trembling will precede you, just as he promised. I've brought you today to the crossroads of blessing and curse. The blessing, if you listen obediently to the commandments of God, your God, which I command you today. The curse, if you don't pay attention to the commandments of God, your God, but leave the road that I command you today, following other gods of which you know nothing. Here's what comes next. When God, your God, brings you into the land you are going into to make your own, you are to give out the blessing from Mount Gerizim and the curse from Mount Ebal. After you cross the Jordan River, follow the road to the west through Canaanite settlements in the valley near Gilgal and the oaks of Moreh. You are crossing the Jordan River to invade and take the land that God, your God, is giving you. Be vigilant. Observe all the regulations and rules I am setting before you today. Deuteronomy 12, 8-10. Don't continue doing things the way we're doing them at present, each of us doing as we wish. Until now, you haven't arrived at the goal, the resting place, the inheritance that God, your God, is giving you. But the minute you cross the Jordan River and settle into the land God, your God, is enabling you to inherit, he'll give you rest from all your surrounding enemies. You'll be able to settle down and live in safety. Deuteronomy 12, 32. Diligently do everything I command you, the way I command you. Don't add to it. Don't subtract from it. Deuteronomy 13, 18. Yes. Obediently listen to God, your God. Keep all his commands that I am giving you today. Do the right thing in the eyes of God, your God. Deuteronomy 15, 7-11. When you happen on someone who's in trouble or needs help among your people with whom you live in this land that God, your God, is giving you, don't look the other way pretending you don't see him. Don't keep a tight grip on your purse. No. Look at him, open your purse, lend whatever and as much as he needs. Don't count the cost. Don't listen to that selfish voice saying, "It's almost the 7th year, the year of all debts are canceled," and turn aside and leave your needy neighbor in the lurch, refusing to help him. He'll call God's attention to you and your blatant sin. Give freely and spontaneously. Don't have a stingy heart. The way you handle matters like this triggers God, your God's, blessing in everything you do, all your work and ventures. There are always going to be poor and needy people among you. So I command you, always be generous, open purse and hands, give to your neighbors in trouble, your poor and hurting neighbors. Deuteronomy 18, 13-14. Be completely loyal to God, your God. These nations that you're about to run out of the country consort with sorcerers and witches. But not you. God, your God, forbids it. Deuteronomy 18, 21-22. You may be wondering among yourselves, how can we tell the difference, whether it was God who spoke or not? Here's how. If what the prophet spoke in God's name doesn't happen, then obviously God wasn't behind it. The prophet made it up. Forget about him. Deuteronomy 23, 21 to 23. When you make a vow to God, your God, don't put off keeping it. God, your God, expects you to keep it, and if you don't, you're guilty. But if you don't make a vow in the first place, there's no sin. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Keep the vow you willingly vowed to God, your God. You promised it, so do it. Deuteronomy 26, 16 to 17. This very day God, your God, commands you to follow these rules and regulations, to live them out with everything you have in you. You've renewed your vows today that God is your God, that you'll live the way He shows you. Do what He tells you in the rules, regulations, and commandments, and listen obediently to Him. Deuteronomy 26, 18 to 19. And today God has reaffirmed that you are dearly held treasure, just as He promised, a people entrusted with keeping His commandments. A people set high above all other nations that He's made, high in praise, fame, and honor. You're a people holy to God, your God. That's what He has promised. Deuteronomy 28, 1 to 6. If you listen obediently to the voice of God, your God, and heartily obey all His commandments that I command you today, God, your God, will place you on high, high above all the nations of the world. All these blessings will come down on you and spread out beyond you, because you have responded to the voice of God, your God. God's blessing inside the city, God's blessing in the country. God's blessing on your children, the crops of your land, the young of your livestock, the calves of your herds, the lambs of your flocks. God's blessing on your basket and bread bowl. God's blessing in your coming in, God's blessing in your going out. Deuteronomy 28, 47 to 48. Because you didn't serve God, your God, out of the joy and goodness of your heart in the great abundance, you'll have to serve your enemies whom God will send against you. Life will be famine and drought, rags and wretchedness. Then He'll put an iron yoke on your neck until He's destroyed you. Yes, God will raise up a faraway nation against you, swooping down on you like an eagle, a nation whose language you can't understand, a mean-faced people, cruel to grandmothers and babies alike. They'll ravage the young of your animals and the crops from your fields until you're destroyed. They'll leave nothing behind, no grain, no wine, no oil, no calves, no lambs, and finally, no you. They'll lay siege to you while you're huddled behind your town gates. They'll knock those high, proud walls flat, those walls behind which you felt so safe. They'll lay siege to your fortified cities all over the country, this country that God, your God, has given you. Deuteronomy 29, 29. God, our God, will take care of the hidden things, but the revealed things are our business. It's up to us and our children to attend to all the terms in this revelation. Deuteronomy 30, 8 to 9. And you will make a new start, listening obediently to God, keeping all His commandments that I'm commanding you today. God, your God, will outdo Himself in making things go well for you. You'll have babies, get calves, grow crops, and enjoy an all-around good life. Yes, God will start enjoying you again, making things go well for you just as he enjoyed doing it for your ancestors. Deuteronomy 30:10. But only if you listen obediently to God, your God, and keep the commandments and regulations written in this book of Revelation. Nothing half-hearted here. You must return to God, your God, totally, heart and soul, holding nothing back. Deuteronomy 30:11-14. This commandment that I'm commanding you today isn't too much for you. It's not out of your reach. It's not on a high mountain. You don't have to get mountaineers to climb the peak and bring it down to your level and explain it before you can live it. And it's not across the ocean. You don't have to send sailors out to get it, bring it back, and then explain it before you can live it. No, the word is right here and now, as near as the tongue in your mouth, as near as the heart in your chest. Just do it. Deuteronomy 30:15-20. Look at what I've done for you today. I've placed in front of you life and good, death and evil. And I command you today, love God, your God. Walk in his ways. Keep his commandments, regulations, and rules so that you will live, really live exuberantly, blessed by God, your God, in the land you are about to enter and possess. But I warn you, if you have a change of heart, refuse to listen obediently, and willfully go off to serve and worship other gods, you will most certainly die. You won't last long in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today. I place before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life so that you and your children will live. And love God, your God, listening obediently to him, firmly embracing him. Oh yes, he is life itself, a long life settled on the soil that God, your God, promised to give your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong. Take courage. Don't be intimidated. Don't give them a second thought because God, your God, is striding ahead of you. He's right there with you. He won't let you down. He won't leave you. Deuteronomy 32:6-7. Don't you realize it is God you are treating like this? This is crazy. Don't you have any sense of reverence? Isn't this your Father who created you, who made you, and gave you a place on earth? Read up on what happened before you were born. Dig into the past. Understand your roots. Ask your parents what it was like before you were born. Ask the old ones. They'll tell you a thing or two. Deuteronomy 32:10-14. He found him out in the wilderness, in an empty, windswept wasteland. He threw his arms around him, lavished attention on him, guarding him as the apple of his eye. He was like an eagle hovering over its nest, overshadowing its young, then spreading its wings, lifting them into the air, teaching them to fly. God alone led him. There was not a foreign god in sight. God lifted him onto the hilltops so he could feast on the crops in the fields. He fed him honey from the rock, oil from granite crags, curds of cattle and the milk of sheep, the choice cuts of lambs and goats, fine Bashan rams, high-quality wheat, and the blood of grapes. You drank good wine. Deuteronomy 32:39-42. Do you see it now? Do you see that I'm the one? Do you see that there's no other God beside me? I bring death and I give life. I wound and I heal. There is no getting away from or around me. I raise my hand in solemn oath. I say, I'm always around. By that very life I promise, when I sharpen my lightning sword and execute judgment, I take vengeance on my enemies and pay back those who hate me. I'll make my arrows drunk with blood. My sword will gorge itself on flesh, feasting on slain and captive alike, the proud and vain enemy corpses. Deuteronomy 33:12. Benjamin, God's beloved, God's permanent residence, encircled by God all day long, within whom God is at home. Joshua 23:6-8. Now stay strong and steady. Obediently do everything written in the book of the Revelation of Moses. Don't miss a detail. Don't get mixed up with the nations that are still around. Don't so much as speak the names of their gods or swear by them. And by all means don't worship or pray to them. Hold tight to God, your God, just as you've done up to now. Judges 7:13. Gideon arrived just in time to hear a man tell his friend a dream. He said, I had this dream. A loaf of barley bread tumbled into the Midianite camp. It came to the tent and hit it so hard it collapsed. The tent fell. Judges 17:6. In those days, there was no king in Israel. People did whatever they felt like doing. 1 Samuel 1:9-11. So Hannah ate. Then she pulled herself together, slipped away quietly, and entered the sanctuary. The priest Eli was on duty at the entrance to God's temple in the customary seat. Crushed in soul, Hannah prayed to God and cried inconsolably. Then she made a vow, O God of the angel armies, if you'll take a good, hard look at my pain, if you'll quit neglecting me and go into action for me by giving me a son, I'll give him completely, unreservedly to you. I'll set him apart for a life of holy discipline. 1 Samuel 1:15-16. Hannah said, Oh no, sir, please. I'm a woman broken-hearted. I haven't been drinking. Not a drop of wine or beer. The only thing I've been pouring out is my heart, pouring it out to God. Don't for a minute think I'm a bad woman. It's because I'm so desperately unhappy and in such pain that I've stayed here so long. 1 Samuel 1:17. Eli answered her, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel give you what you have asked of him. 1 Samuel 1:20. Before the year was out, Hannah had conceived and given birth to a son. She named him Samuel, explaining, I asked God for him. 1 Samuel 2:1-10. Hannah prayed, I'm bursting with God news. I'm walking on air. I'm laughing at my rivals. I'm dancing my salvation. Nothing and no one is holy like God, no rock mountain like our God. Don't dare talk pretentiously, not a word of boasting ever. For God knows what's going on. He takes the measure of everything that happens. The weapons of the strong are smashed to pieces, while the weak are infused with fresh strength. The well-fed are out begging in the streets for crusts, while the hungry are getting second helpings. The barren woman has a house full of children, while the mother of many is bereft. God brings death and God brings life, brings down to the grave and raises up. God brings poverty and God brings wealth. He lowers, he also lifts up. He puts poor people on their feet again. He rekindles burned-out lives with fresh hope, restoring dignity and respect to their lives, a place in the sun. For the very structures of earth are God's. He has laid out his operations on a firm foundation. He protectively cares for his faithful friends, step by step, but leaves the wicked to stumble in the dark. No one makes it in this life by sheer muscle. God's enemies will be blasted out of the sky, crashed in a heap and burned. God will set things right all over the earth. He'll give strength to his king. He'll set his anointed on top of the world. 1 Samuel 2:21. God was most especially kind to Hannah. She had 3 more sons and 2 daughters. The boy Samuel stayed at the sanctuary and grew up with God. 1 Samuel 12:20-22. Samuel said to them, "Don't be fearful. It's true that you have done something very wrong. All the same, don't turn your back on God. Worship and serve him heart and soul. Don't chase after ghost gods. There's nothing to them. They can't help you. They're nothing but ghost gods. God, simply because of who he is not going to walk off and leave his people. God took delight in making you into his very own people." 1 Samuel 12:23-25. And neither will I walk off and leave you. That would be a sin against God. I'm staying right here at my post praying for you and teaching you the good and right way to live. But I beg of you, fear God and worship him honestly and heartily. You've seen how greatly he has worked among you. Be warned, if you live badly, both you and your king will be thrown out. 1 Samuel 26:22-24. David answered, "See what I have here, the king's spear. Let one of your servants come and get it. It's God's business to decide what to do with each of us in regard to what's right and who's loyal. God put your life in my hands today, but I wasn't willing to lift a finger against God's anointed. Just as I honored your life today, may God honor my life and rescue me from all trouble." 1 Samuel 27:1. David thought to himself, "Sooner or later, Saul's going to get me. The best thing I can do is escape to Philistine country. Saul will count me a lost cause and quit hunting me down in every nook and cranny of Israel. I'll be out of his reach for good." 1 Samuel 28:6-7. Saul prayed to God, but God didn't answer, neither by dream, nor by sign, nor by prophet. So Saul ordered his officials, "Find me someone who can call up spirits, so I may go and seek counsel from those spirits." His servant said, "There's a witch at Endor." 2 Samuel 7:18-29. King David went in, took his place before God, and prayed, "Who am I, my master God, and what is my family, that you have brought me to this place in life? But that's nothing compared to what's coming, for you've also spoken of my family far into the future, given me a glimpse into tomorrow, my master God. What can I possibly say in the face of all this? You know me, Master God, just as I am. This is what makes you so great, Master God. There is none like you, No God but you, nothing to compare with what we've heard with our own ears. And who is like your people, like Israel, a nation unique in the earth, whom God set out to redeem for himself and became most famous for it, performing great and fearsome acts, throwing out nations and their gods left and right as you saved your people from Egypt? You established for yourself a people, your very own Israel, your people. You've done all this not because of who I am, but because of who you are, out of your very heart. But you've let me in on it. And you, God, became their God. So now, great God, this word that you have spoken to me and my family, guarantee it permanently. Do exactly what you've promised. Then your reputation will flourish always as people exclaim, "The God of the angel armies is God over Israel." And the house of your servant David will remain sure and solid in your watchful presence. For you, God of the angel armies, Israel's God, told me plainly, I will build you a house. That's how I was able to find the courage to pray this prayer to you. And now, Master God, being the God you are, speaking sure words as you do, and having just said this wonderful thing to me, please, just one more thing. Bless my family. Keep your eye on them always. You've already as much as said that you would, Master God. Oh, may your blessing be on my family permanently. 2 Samuel 12, 13-14. Then David confessed to Nathan, I've sinned against God. Nathan pronounced, yes, but that's not the last word. God forgives your sin. You won't die for it, but because of your blasphemous behavior, the son born to you will die. 2 Samuel 22, 2-20. God is bedrock under my feet, the castle in which I live, my rescuing knight. My God, the high crag where I run for dear life, hiding behind the boulders, safe in the granite hideout. My mountaintop refuge, he saves me from ruthless men. I sing to God the praise lofty, and find myself safe and saved. The waves of death crashed over me, devil waters rushed over me. Hell's ropes cinched me tight, death traps barred every exit. A hostile world. I called to God, to my God I cried out. From his palace he heard me call. My cry brought me right into his presence, a private audience. Earth wobbled and lurched. The very heavens shook like leaves, quaked like aspen leaves because of his rage. His nostrils flared, billowing smoke. His mouth spit fire. Tongues of fire darted in and out. He lowered the sky. He stepped down. Under his feet, an abyss opened up. He rode a winged creature, swift on wind wings. He wrapped himself in a trench coat of black rain cloud darkness. But his cloud brightness burst through, a grand comet of fireworks. Then God thundered out of heaven. The high God gave a great shout. God shot his arrows pandemonium. He hurled his lightnings a rout. The secret sources of ocean were exposed. The hidden depths of earth lay uncovered the moment God roared in protest, let loose his hurricane anger. But me he caught, reached all the way from sky to sea. He pulled me out of that ocean of hate, that enemy chaos, the void in which I was drowning. They hit me when I was down, but God stuck by me. He stood me up on a wide open field. I stood there saved, surprised to be loved. 2 Samuel 22, 21-51. God made my life complete when I placed all the pieces before him. When I cleaned up my act, he gave me a fresh start. Indeed, I've kept alert to God's ways. I haven't taken God for granted. Every day I review the ways he works, I try not to miss a trick. I feel put back together, and I'm watching my step. God rewrote the text of my life when I opened the book of my heart to his eyes. You stick by people who stick with you. You're straight with people who are straight with you. You're good to good people. You shrewdly work around the bad ones. You take the side of the down and out, but the stuck up, you take down a peg. Suddenly, God, your light floods my path. God drives out the darkness. I smash the bands of marauders. I vault the high fences. What a God! His road stretches straight and smooth. Every God direction is road tested. Everyone who runs toward him makes it. Is there any God like God? Are we not at bedrock? Is not this the God who armed me well, then aimed me in the right direction? Now I run like a deer. I'm king of the mountain. He shows me how to fight. I can bend a bronze bow. You protect me with salvation armor. You touch me and I feel 10 feet tall. You cleared the ground under me, so my footing was firm. When I chased my enemies, I caught them. I didn't let go till they were dead men. I nailed them. They were down for good. Then I walked all over them. You armed me well for this fight. You smashed the upstarts. You made my enemies turn tail, and I wiped out the haters. They cried uncle, but uncle didn't come. They yelled for God and got no for an answer. I ground them to dust. They gusted in the wind. I threw them out like garbage in the gutter. You rescued me from a squabbling people. You made me a leader of nations. People I'd never heard of served me. The moment they got wind of me, they submitted. They gave up. They came trembling from their hideouts. Live God, blessing to my rock, my towering salvation God. This God set things right for me and shut up the people who talked back. He rescued me from enemy anger. You pulled me from the grip of upstarts. You saved me from the bullies. That's why I'm thanking you, God, all over the world. That's why I'm singing songs that rhyme your name. God's king takes the trophy. God's chosen is beloved. I mean David and all his children always. 2 Samuel 23, 2-7. God's Spirit spoke through me. His words took shape on my tongue. The God of Israel spoke to me. Israel's rock mountain said, whoever governs fairly and well, who rules in the fear of God, is like first light at daybreak without a cloud in the sky, like green grass carpeting earth, glistening under fresh rain. And this is just how my regime has been. For God guaranteed his covenant with me, spelled it out plainly, and kept every promised word, my entire salvation, my every desire. But the devil's henchmen are like thorns culled and piled as trash. Better not try to touch them. Keep your distance with a rake or hoe. They'll make a glorious bonfire. 2 Samuel 24, 10. But when it was all done, David was overwhelmed with guilt because he had counted the people, replacing trust with statistics. And David prayed to God, I have sinned badly in what I have just done. But now, God, forgive my guilt. I've been really stupid. 2 Samuel 24, 14. David told Gad, they're all terrible, but I'd rather be punished by God, whose mercy is great, than fall into human hands. 2 Kings 6, 16-17. He said, don't worry about it. There are more on our side than on their side. Then Elisha prayed, O God, open his eyes and let him see. The eyes of the young man were opened and he saw. A wonder? the whole mountainside full of horses and chariots of fire surrounding Elisha. 1 Chronicles 4, 9-10. Jabez was a better man than his brothers, a man of honor. His mother had named him Jabez-o, the pain, saying, a painful birth. I bore him in great pain. Jabez prayed to the God of Israel, bless me, O bless me. Give me land, large tracts of land, and provide your personal protection. Don't let evil hurt me. God gave him what he asked. 1 Chronicles 22, 5-6. David was thinking, my son Solomon is too young to plan ahead for this. But the sanctuary that is to be built for God has to be the greatest, the talk of all the nations. So I'll get the construction materials together. That's why David prepared this huge stockpile of building materials before he died. Then he called in Solomon his son and commanded him to build a sanctuary for the God of Israel. 1 Chronicles 22, 11-16. So now, son, God be with you. Godspeed as you build the sanctuary for your God, the job God has given you. And may God also give you discernment and understanding when he puts you in charge of Israel, so that you will rule in reverent obedience under God's revelation. That's what will make you successful, following the directions and doing the things that God commanded Moses for Israel. Courage. Take charge. Don't be timid. Don't hold back. Look at this. I've gone to a lot of trouble to stockpile materials for the sanctuary of God. 100,000 talents, 3,775 tons of gold. 1,000,000 talents, 37,750 tons of silver. Tons of bronze and iron, too much to weigh, and all this timber and stone. And you're free to add more. And workers both plentiful and prepared, stone cutters, masons, carpenters, artisans in gold and silver, bronze and iron. You're all set. Get to work. And Godspeed. 1 Chronicles 28, 9-10. And you, Solomon my son, get to know well your father's God. Serve him with a whole heart and eager mind, for God examines every heart and sees through every motive. If you seek him, he'll make sure you find him, but if you abandon him, he'll leave you for good. Look sharp now. God has chosen you to build his holy house. Be brave, determined, and do it. 1 Chronicles 28, 20-21. David continued to address Solomon. Take charge. Take heart. Don't be anxious or get discouraged. God, my God, is with you in this. He won't walk off and leave you in the lurch. He's at your side until every last detail is completed for conducting the worship of God. You have all the priests and Levites standing ready to pitch in, and skillful craftsmen and artisans of every kind ready to go to work. Both leaders and people are ready. Just say the word. 1 Chronicles 29, 9-19. And the people were full of a sense of celebration, all that giving, and all given willingly, freely. King David was exuberant. David blessed God in full view of the entire congregation. Blessed are you, God of Israel, our Father from of old and forever. To you, O God, belong the greatness and the might, the glory, the victory, the majesty, the splendor. Yes, everything in heaven, everything on earth, the kingdom all yours. You've raised yourself high over all. Riches and glory come from you, your ruler over all. You hold strength and power in the palm of your hand to build up and strengthen all. And here we are, O God, our God, giving thanks to you, praising your splendid name. But me, who am I, and who are these my people, that we should presume to be giving something to you? Everything comes from you. All we're doing is giving back what we've been given from your generous hand. As far as you're concerned, we're homeless, shiftless wanderers like our ancestors, our lives mere shadows, hardly anything to us. God, our God, all these materials, these piles of stuff for building a house of worship for you, honoring your holy name, it all came from you. It was all yours in the first place. I know, dear God, that you care nothing for the surface. You want us, our true selves, and so I have given from the heart, honestly and happily. And now see all these people doing the same, giving freely, willingly. What a joy! O God, God of our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, keep this generous spirit alive forever in these people always. Keep their heart set firmly in you. And give my son Solomon an uncluttered and focused heart, so that he can obey what you command, live by your directions and counsel, and carry through with building the temple for which I have provided. 2 Chronicles 1:8-10. Solomon answered, You are extravagantly generous with David my father, and now you have made me king in his place. Establish, God, the words you spoke to my father, for you've given me a staggering task, ruling this mob of people. Yes, give me wisdom and knowledge as one come and go among this people, for who on his own is capable of leading these, your glorious people? 2 Chronicles 1:11-12. God answered Solomon, This is what has come out of your heart. You didn't grasp for money, wealth, fame, and the doom of your enemies. You didn't even ask for a long life. You asked for wisdom and knowledge, so you could govern well my people, over whom I've made you king. Because of this, you get what you asked for, wisdom and knowledge. And I'm presenting you the rest as a bonus, money, wealth, and fame beyond anything the kings before or after you had or will have. 2 Chronicles 2:5-10. The house I am building has to be the best, for our God is the best, far better than competing gods. But who is capable of building such a structure? Why, the skies, the entire cosmos, can't begin to contain him. And me, who am I to think I can build a house adequate for God, burning incense to him, is about all I'm good for. I need your help. Send me a master artisan in gold, silver, bronze, iron, textiles of purple, crimson, and violet, and who knows the craft of engraving. He will supervise the trained craftsmen in Judah and Jerusalem. Also send cedar, cypress, and algum logs from Lebanon. I know you have lumberjacks experienced in the Lebanon forests. I'll send workers to join your crews to cut plenty of timber. I'm going to need a lot, for this house I'm building is going to be absolutely stunning, a showcase temple. I'll provide all the food necessary for your crew of lumberjacks and loggers, 130,000 bushels of wheat, 120,000 gallons of wine, and 120,000 gallons of olive oil. 2 Chronicles 6:4-11. Blessed be God, the God of Israel, who spoke personally to my father David. Now he has done what he promised when he said, From the day I brought my people Israel up from Egypt, I haven't set apart one city among the tribes of Israel in which to build a temple to honor my name, or chosen one person to be the leader. But now I have chosen both a city and a person, Jerusalem for honoring my name, and David to lead my people, Israel. My father David very much wanted to build a temple honoring the name of God, the God of Israel, but God told him, "It was good that you wanted to build a temple in my honor, most commendable. But you are not the one to do it. Your son, who will carry on your dynasty, will build it for my name, and now you see the promise completed. God has done what he said he would do. I have succeeded David my father, and now rule Israel. And I have built a temple to honor God, the God of Israel, and have secured a place for the chest that holds the covenant of God, the covenant he made with the people of Israel." 2 Chronicles 7:11. Solomon completed building the temple of God and the royal palace, the projects he had set his heart on doing. Everything was done success, satisfaction. 2 Chronicles 13:12. Can't you see the obvious? God is on our side. He's our leader. And his priests with trumpets are all ready to blow the signal to battle. O Israel, don't fight against God, the God of your ancestors. You will not win this battle. 2 Chronicles 13:10-11. But for the rest of us in Judah, we're sticking with God. We have not traded him in for the latest model. We're keeping the tried and true priests of Aaron to lead us to God, and the Levites to lead us in worship. By sacrificing whole burnt offerings and aromatic incense to God at the daily morning and evening prayers, setting out fresh holy bread on a clean table, and lighting the lamps on the golden lampstand. We continue doing what God told us to in the way he told us to do it, but you have rid yourselves of him. 2 Chronicles 25:7-8. A holy man showed up and said, "No, O king, don't let those northern Israelite soldiers into your army. God is not on their side, nor with any of the Ephraimites. Instead, you go by yourself and be strong. God and God only has the power to help or hurt your cause." Esther 4:9-16. Hathach came back and told Esther everything Mordecai had said. Esther talked it over with Hathach, and then sent him back to Mordecai with this message: "Everyone who works for the king here, and even the people out in the provinces, knows that there is a single fate for every man or woman who approaches the king without being invited: death. The one exception is if the king extends his gold scepter. Then he or she may live. And it's been 30 days now since I have been invited to come to the king. When Hathach told Mordecai what Esther had said, Mordecai sent her this message: Don't think that just because you live in the king's house, you're the one Jew who will get out of this alive. If you persist in staying silent at a time like this, help and deliverance will arrive for the Jews from someplace else. But you and your family will be wiped out. Who knows? Maybe you were made queen for just such a time as this." Esther sent back her answer to Mordecai: "Go and get all the Jews living in Susa together. Fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, either day or night. I and my maids will fast with you. If you will do this, I'll go to the king, even though it's forbidden. If I die, I die,